Hey everyone, welcome back. If you've ever received a Medicare denial and thought, what do I do now? This video is for you. Today we're going deep on how to navigate a Medicare denial, how to win the appeal, and how to approach the Medicare appeals process the right way so you don't accidentally miss deadlines, submit weak paperwork, or fight the wrong issue. Today we're going to cover Medicare denial reasons, claim denial versus coverage denial, what medical necessity actually means in plain English, and how to respond to denials like not reasonable and necessary, not medically necessary, no skill needed, lack of documentation, and benefit category denials. You'll also learn the exact strategy most people miss, building an appeal that matches what the denial letter is really saying, and then backing it up with the right medical records, the right documentation, and the right language. By the end of this video, you'll have a clear game plan for your Medicare appeal, and you'll understand the difference between simply requesting a review and submitting an appeal that has a real chance to win. And just so we're aligned, when you search YouTube for Medicare appeal denial or Medicare denial appeal steps, how to appeal Medicare, Medicare reconsideration form, Medicare beneficiary appeal, request for redetermination, QIC review, ALJ Medicare hearing, and DMERC or MAC related keywords, this is the topic that actually matters because your next move can be the difference between losing by default and winning on the merits.
Welcome to the medical walkthrough.
So let's start with the first thing people get wrong. They treat a denial like it's personal or mysterious. Medicare denials aren't random. They are decisions based on coverage rules, documentation standards, and benefit requirements. So step one, your mindset. You're not trying to argue with Medicare. You're trying to show with evidence that the service or item meets Medicare coverage requirements. That means the appeal has to be evidence-driven, denial-specific, and deadline-aware. Now, before we talk about appeals, let's talk about what you received. Medicare denial letters can look different depending on what program you're in. Original Medicare Parts A and B, Medicare Advantage, or Medicare Part D, and each has its own process and terminology. So whether you're dealing with a Medicare Advantage denial, often called a utilization management denial, or an original Medicare denial, often tied to a claim review, your first job is to identify what type of denial it is. Is it a claim denial for a specific bill? Is it a coverage denial? Is it a denial of payment because the claim can't be processed? Is it a denial because they say the service isn't medically necessary? Or is it a denial because they say the item or service is excluded from coverage? Those categories matter because they tell you what kind of evidence you need to present. If you find this helpful so far, hit like and subscribe right now because Medicare appeals content that actually breaks down the denial strategy is exactly what you'll want in your corner. And if you're watching this because you got a denial letter and you're trying to avoid making a costly mistake, subscribe now so you don't miss the next step. Okay, now let's talk about the Medicare denial letter itself, because that letter is the blueprint. You want to read it like a detective reads a case file. Look for the reason codes and the exact wording. If they say not medically necessary, you need to address medical necessity with documentation. If they say missing documentation, you need to supply the missing documentation. If they say the service doesn't meet a coverage criterion, you need to show how it meets that criterion. Here's a powerful way to think about it. Your denial letter is not just a rejection. It's a set of questions you need to answer. The appeal should answer the questions they asked using evidence they can't ignore. Now let's get practical. A strong Medicare appeal usually includes 4 elements. First, you identify the issue clearly. Second, You provide supporting medical documentation that proves medical necessity or coverage criteria. Third, you explain why the documentation supports the service billed. And fourth, you submit it in the format and within the deadlines required by Medicare or the plan. The reason people lose appeals is that they skip one of those elements, or they send irrelevant documents, or they submit too late, or they don't connect the evidence to the denial reason. Let's talk about deadlines, because deadlines are where many appeals die. Medicare has specific time limits, and Medicare Advantage also has specific time limits. Even if you have the strongest medical evidence in the world, if you miss the deadline, you can lose the appeal without the merits ever being fully considered. So, your action step is simple. Immediately note the date on the denial letter, the deadline for appeal, and what form or request is required. Then create a checklist of what you need and when you need it. And yes, there are different appeal levels. For original Medicare, you often see steps like redetermination, reconsideration, and possibly an administrative law judge hearing, depending on the case. For Medicare Advantage, the appeal process may include internal plan appeals and then further levels if it doesn't resolve. Even if you don't memorize the names, remember the principle. Medicare appeals are structured, and each stage may have different requirements. That's why your approach at the first stage matters. It sets the tone and the evidentiary foundation for what comes next. Now let's address the big buzzword everyone sees in denials: medical necessity. Medical necessity can sound vague, but in practice it's very specific. Medicare typically expects that the item or service is reasonable and necessary for the diagnosis or treatment of the patient's condition. That means there should be a clinical reason, supporting documentation, and a clear connection between the patient's condition and the billed service. So when you're preparing your appeal, you want the story to make clinical sense, not just it helped. Medicare wants the documented clinical reasoning, symptoms, diagnoses, how the service is tied to the condition, and what criteria the service meets. This is also where the right language matters. If your appeal reads like a complaint without evidence, it gets treated like noise. If your appeal reads like a documentation, supported medical argument tied to the denial reason, it gets treated like a legitimate request for review. Let's talk about evidence, because evidence is the difference between denied and approved. High-quality evidence in a Medicare appeal usually includes physician documentation, progress notes, clinical evaluations, therapy notes, imaging reports, operative reports, lab results, skilled need documentation if you're dealing with skilled services, and any documentation showing why less intensive or alternative services weren't sufficient. But here's the key. You don't just dump paperwork. You curate it. You submit the records that directly support the denial reason. So if the denial says the record lacks documentation of the frequency, duration, or skilled component, you supply documents that address frequency, duration, and skilled need. If the denial says the service doesn't meet the criteria, you supply documentation that demonstrates each element of the criteria. That's how you turn your appeal from hope into strategy. Quick plug, and I mean this sincerely, because it can save you time and reduce mistakes. If you want a clear step-by-step approach to handling a Medicare denial, building your appeal, and organizing your medical documentation the right way, grab my Patient Protection Blueprint ebook. It's designed to help patients and caregivers navigate denials with structure and confidence, so you're not guessing what to do next or scrambling after deadlines. The ebook walks you through the strategy and the documentation approach so you can present a stronger case. You can find the link in the description below, and I'll be right here with you for the rest of the video. Now let's go into a common scenario. You get denied for something that you believe is obviously needed. Maybe it's durable medical equipment. Maybe it's some home health services. Maybe it's therapy. Maybe it's a procedure or a hospital-related service. The frustration is real. But denial letters still come down to documentation and coverage criteria. So your job is to translate needed into Medicare language by showing coverage requirements that are met. A powerful approach is to write a brief appeal narrative that is focused and denial specific, not long, not emotional, focused. The goal is to align your narrative with what Medicare is actually asking for. You can say things like what the patient's condition is, what clinical issues require the service, how the service addresses those issues, and which documentation supports that. Then you attach the documentation and organize it so reviewers can follow it easily. If your submission is a mess, unlabeled pages, no context, no dates, reviewers may struggle to extract meaning. Your goal is clarity. Let's talk about plan denials too, because Medicare Advantage denials are incredibly common. Many people think Medicare Advantage is the same as original Medicare, but the appeal process and decision-making structure can be different. With Medicare Advantage, you might see denials related to prior authorization, coverage limits, medical necessity determinations, or utilization management decisions. The strategy is still evidence-based, but the language and process are plan-specific. So whether you're appealing a Medicare Advantage denial or an original Medicare denial, your principle stays the same. Match the evidence to the denial reason and follow the required steps and timelines. If the denial says the plan requires additional information before approval, then your appeal should include exactly what additional information they need. Don't send extra documents that don't answer the stated gaps. Here's another major mistake. People appeal with the same records they already submitted, hoping that persistence will change the outcome. But appeals are not just another chance. Appeals are a chance to fix what was missing or to clarify what was unclear and to provide the evidence that meets the coverage standard. So, as you prepare your appeal, ask yourself, what exactly did they say was wrong? Was it incomplete documentation? Was it insufficient clinical justification? Was it the wrong billing code or benefit category issue? Was it that the service didn't meet a criterion? Then build your appeal around that. Sometimes the win is not changing the medical facts, it's organizing and presenting the facts in a way that directly addresses the denial. Now, let's talk about what makes a Medicare appeal stronger: specificity. Instead of saying, my loved one needs this, you connect the medical dots, diagnoses, symptoms, and clinical findings. Instead of saying the doctor ordered it, you show why it meets Medicare's medical necessity or coverage criteria. Instead of saying we tried everything, you show that what was tried and why it failed and why a less intensive option wasn't adequate. Strong appeals are not vague. They're specific, well-documented, and denial letter aligned. And if you can get the clinician to support the appeal when appropriate, do it. A short clinician letter that summarizes medical necessity and references relevant documentation can be extremely persuasive when it's accurate and when it's consistent with the medical records. That doesn't mean you need a dramatic letter. It means you need a clear clinical explanation tied to the denial reason. Let's also cover practical organization because it matters. Use dates. Use labels or labeled documents, including a cover page, if the process allows it, with the patient name, date of denial, service dates, claim numbers, if applicable, and the appeal reason. Then attach exhibits in an order that follows the denial letter. If you're submitting multiple documents, group them by category like clinical notes, diagnostic testing, progress notes, and clinician statements. Reviewers should be able to see the evidence quickly. Remember, your goal isn't to overwhelm the reviewer. Your goal is to make the reviewer's job easy by matching evidence to denial reasons. Now, I want to leave this video with a simple checklist in your head. Not a bulleted list in this format, but a mental sequence. First, identify the denial type and the exact reason wording. Second, confirm deadlines and required appeal steps. Third, build an evidence package that addresses the denial reason with documentation that supports medical necessity or coverage criteria. Fourth, write a focused narrative that ties the evidence to the denial decision. And fifth, submit organized materials on time. If you do those 5 things, you dramatically increase your chances compared to the majority of appeals that are rushed, generic, or evidence light. If you got value from this video, don't just watch, take action. The clock is ticking on your 120-day appeal window, and every day you wait is a day the insurance company wins. To help you fight back right now, I've put together a complete downloadable document below. Inside, you'll get the exact steps to leverage your good faith estimate under the law, including how to invoke the $400 rule to legally dispute your bill if your final charge exceeds your estimate by $400 or more, plus my copy and paste settlement amount script to force them to negotiate. Finally, this document also contains a checklist summarizing what we discussed earlier in this episode. Do not wait until it's too late and you're stuck with a massive bill. Click the link in the description below to download the PDF and the Patient Protection Blueprint immediately. Arm yourself with these items and protect your savings today. Thanks for watching. Hit like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Blessings.
Download your copy of the Patient Protection Blueprint now. Click the link in the description for your copy.